Pop Culture Pastor.
You're listening to the morning show here on KFEX, Firescape Radio 93.1. Firescape's open. Come get yourself a coffee. Sit down, listen to some music about Jesus and other positive things.
Well, if Jefferson Starship builds the house.
They did not. They built this city.
They did. And it was on rock and roll.
Built this city on rock and roll. Did they, though?
That's what they claim.
Yeah, they're playing loose and fast with that definition of rock and roll, I think. Loose and fast with it. But, you know, all right. What city are we talking about? Is it Tucumcari, New Mexico, though? It's clearly not a flashy city.
I assumed it was Detroit.
We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. And you're not going to want to go there. Because was there any other good songs that they did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, was that Starship Airplane? I don't know. I get them all confused.
Jefferson Airplane, and then I think they become the Starship of the Jefferson variety.
It's like not a spinoff of the Jeffersons.
No.
Because this band was not moving on up to the east side. Anyways, this is KFEX, Firescape Radio 93.1. You're listening to Dave and Cody in the morning. And Cody's looking something up. What are you looking up?
I will say they had the song Sarah, Jane, which has made a big...
These are just names.
It made a big comeback because a wrestler just recently used it.
Okay. Sarah, is that I'm trying to place that one in my head.
I think it just goes Sarah.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah. Is it that one?
Yeah.
Times is a good time to listen to this song. I don't know. Yeah, it's not like it wasn't Sarah Smile.
No, that's a classic
From Hall & Oates, which was a good song. And it wasn't the one Toto did. That was Rosanna.
Two different songs and names.
Yeah. It's like I'm noticing a trend here in the 80s. Or it wasn't Oh Sherry by Steve Perry, which rhymed because that was amazing.
That's a great song. Very undervalued.
Yeah, right? Well, it's because Steve Perry went solo. It was without Journey. It was weird, but he's still Steve Perry.
Poor Steve Perry doesn't get anything anymore. Yeah.
But that must have been an 80s thing. We just like singing girls' names. Oh, Sherry. You couldn't even understand the words once he got so high. It was just like, you're just listening to Steve Perry's voice at that point.
Yeah.
Anyways, you want it. That's the way you need it. Any way you want it.
Okay.
Yeah, are you going to acknowledge? Okay. All right. This is going off the rails.
This is ramblings now.
This is not a song titled after the name of some random lady. At times, Cody, I have communicated out loud that I wonder if people are getting less intelligent.
In times of trouble, Mother Mary's words come to me. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be, Dave.
Well, I'm going somewhere real with this because
okay.
Statistics would tell you that our attention span is definitely getting smaller.
It is.
Because we're looking at our phones too much, which you were doing just then.
I was.
Threw down your phone because you knew where I was going. But
fit of rage.
I think sometimes I have concluded, maybe falsely, that people are less intelligent now than even just like 50 years ago. As an effect, not just because I want to call everyone dumb. That's not what I'm out to do. I think maybe I just think that when I think about like the social media stuff. But I was thinking about this the other day. I saw a story. I'm building to this story I want to share with you. I actually think the problem sometimes is we're over analytical. We tend to analyze people's words in print. Like when we put it on the internet, on social media, we tend to be in text. We tend to overanalyze the words being used and try to put meaning into the words that weren't part of the intent. It's part of the problem of not being face to face with someone. Is that a good theory or no? You seem like you're backing away from that theory.
I'm not backing away necessarily. I would say we're more socially unaware and maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say unintelligent, but like I feel like we've lost compassion in our social interactions.
But is it fair to say that that is a product of declining social interaction rather than declining intelligence?
Yeah, although I would think that if you rationally think that eventually you would get to, well, if you have some intelligence, you would be aware that people make mistakes, that sometimes words get misused, and I should have some compassion because I may need this person later down the road. And that's just being a selfish person. I mean, if you're a thoughtful, caring person, you're going to have a lot more beneficial reasons for being connected and giving and showing grace, and whether it's in printed form, social media form, or face-to-face interactions.
Well, I have to be fair. I'm only doing this as a preface because I'm working up to this story that kind of dropped in the last few days about someone that I think most of us weren't even aware of. She's a science fiction author. She apparently was learning to live with being quote unquote canceled.
Oh, yeah, this person that I still don't know who they are.
Yeah. So it's a strange story because if you didn't know who she was and she's talking about being canceled, you're like, well, I don't even know who you are. How can you cancel someone you already even know? But it's an interesting story, and I wanted to get into some things she said specifically and what caused her to actually be canceled, what she said, because it was, of course, a tweet, 2 tweets. And I want to actually read the tweets, and I want to discuss this idea that, are we too analytical? Do we analyze so much that we read more into a text that wasn't meant to be there?
So I'll say I don't think it's everyone, but I think there's certain segments of the population, yes.
Lindsay Ellis, science fiction author, recently returned to something called VidCon, some sort of convention.
That sounds made up.
It's not. She returned to VidCon after she felt she'd been canceled by the internet community that she had worked so hard to build, this story says. She had totally gotten off social media. She ended her accounts, and this has been a year. It's been a year when she finally showed back up to VidCon. She's decided to come back, and she was participating in these panels that, there's always panels at these conventions. But of course, people were surprised that she was there because she'd felt the wrath of what is called cancel culture.
I was surprised she was there just because I didn't know who she was or what this event was.
Let's talk about why she got canceled.
Okay.
She tweeted this. This is her tweet. Now, understand this VidCon or this crowd she's in is very much maybe anime oriented, and also she's an author, so the young adult fantasy genre.
Right? That's a unique group.
She tweeted this: I think we need to come up with a name for this genre that is basically Avatar: The Last Airbender reduxes. It's like half of all YA fantasy published in the last few years anyways. That's what she tweeted.
Okay.
Now, I don't know where you're at with that, Cody, but I don't even understand this tweet. This is so far over my head, I don't even know what she's talking about, other than I've heard of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I'm offended that she would soil the good name of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Well, I don't think she's giving it a bad name. I think she's saying that it was so good that everything in her genre, everything in her area was basically copies in some way, which,
yeah.
I mean, I can kind of understand. That's kind of what happens in pop culture sometimes. But some people apparently suggested that the comparison of Avatar and Raya and the Last Dragon, which is what she was maybe alluding to, both of which portray Asian characters, was racist. That her criticism, since it was a criticism of a certain genre of pop culture, was actually a racist criticism.
Okay.
Which again, I think the problem isn't that we're getting dumber. I think that it's over analytical. When I look at this as someone who doesn't have knowledge of this genre she's in, or much knowledge, I look at this statement she tweeted and I can look at it and say, oh, this is the kind of thing people who love pop culture say. We just have opinions. We're like, oh, well, it seems like everything's a copy of this. And I'm not criticizing the people who made it or the characters in it. I'm criticizing the just the quality of the stories that are coming out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like saying if I criticize Star Wars, I'm criticizing white dudes with beards, like George Lucas, right? Like, that's over analytical. You're taking it too far.
So I will play the opposite side's advocate on this.
Cody's a contrarian.
I am.
And he likes to do this. Go ahead.
So if I was a person of the Asian American community, having these stories out there are representative, and where it hasn't always been a good representation of Asian culture throughout pop culture. And so just specifically mentioning these two stories, I would be a little disappointed. But again, I get your point. Your point makes sense.
No. It's not my point. It's just a theory.
Yeah, well, your theory makes sense because, I mean, literally, now I feel you can say for a while everyone was trying to make this type of superhero movie or whatever. And I would list out a very specific one to list off, and then people would be like, how dare you? You know, and so...
well, let's devise a new theory. Okay, we're talking about this science fiction author who got canceled by her crowd. Mm-hmm. I was talking about a theory I had where maybe we're not... It's not that we're dumber. We're just being too over-analytical.
Yeah.
Cody presents the alternate side of that. And so I want to build on a new theory. Okay. So like you're talking about that maybe the reaction, maybe the spark to the reaction is justified, which is possible because maybe when we speak out about something in a fandom sort of way, we're not fully informed.
Yeah.
So your point was that Asian American representation in pop culture, in American pop culture specifically, hasn't been great over the years.
Mm-mm.
And a lot of groups can say that. I think of Native Americans too, as like, you think about the whole Western genre over the years and how awful of a representation and non-factual of a representation that was for Native Americans. And certainly Asian Americans have that same thought when it comes to Hollywood. So let's go with this idea that maybe she's kind of like, in a way, ignorantly belittling the Asian American pop culture that's coming out now. Can't we look at it and say, well, clearly that wasn't her intent?
Yeah.
Like maybe we move on to say, okay, how do we change the reaction? Because to immediately jump to the point where, oh, that's a racist tweet and you deserve to be canceled from your career and everything else, it's just such a weird and drastic step. And why, I guess what I'm asking is, why do we assume through print? We do this now with just this. It's coming up in pop culture here, but we do it in everything. Why do we assume that everything is delivered with hate?
Yeah, I kind of wonder because it seems quite frequently that there's often a couple tweets that are problematic before this, and people just go digging through and they're like, oh, this person's character is the worst. Yeah. Canceled. Now, I don't know this to be fact with this person that got quote unquote canceled, but I do think that when there is uproar, that if even just being in a PR position, but if you're a Christian, I think you should be attentive to what the noise is, and you can apologize and say, hey, I can see your viewpoint that you might feel that this is racist. It really wasn't my intent. My intent was we're not doing original stories anymore. We're just doing variants, and that this genre needs to expand. And that was my only point. And so something like that covers over a lot of angriness. And there would still be people that are like, no, let's cancel her. But
I'm going to turn it back to the over analytical piece here in a second, because there was a follow-up tweet.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I intentionally left that part out. We'll come back and talk about that. Okay, we're back. We're talking about this sci-fi author that got canceled. I read you her first tweet that was pretty innocuous in my opinion, but I will admit it goes over my head. I don't fully understand the pop culture properties she's referencing. And she drew people's anger because the properties she's talking about, would be her area. Mm-hmm. She's a sci-fi author. She's at these conventions that deal with anime, and it's largely considered Asian influenced.
Yeah.
And she makes this comparison between things coming out and basically kind of says that the quality of the storytelling is not good, but they took it as something that was being racist toward Asians. Now, here's where it gets dicey. She tries to apologize.
Oh, okay.
On Twitter. And again, I think here's a free PR tip for anyone who has a following on social media, whatever. When you want to apologize for something you've said, something you've done, because, hey, it happens. We say things that are ignorant sometimes. I'm sure I've said tons of ignorant things into this microphone. And if people got mad, I would have to apologize. So here's the tip. When you apologize, do a video. Do not do it over text or printed word. Let people see the sincerity and the genuineness in your eyes, in your delivery, because that's what we're missing with the social interaction. Because here's what she tweeted. All right, you ready for this? I can see where if you squint, I was implying that all Asian-inspired properties are the same, especially if you were already privy to those conversations where I had not seen them. But the basic framework of TLA is becoming popular in fantasy fiction outside of Asian-inspired stuff. Now, basically she says what you said, Cody. It's like, oh, I wasn't implying this. I was saying that the genre needs to expand. Mm-hmm. Now, can you guess the word that people saw, and immediately it all intensified?
Did they see the word squint?
They did. She's using a phrase, a common phrase, a saying that we would understand as like, you're being overanalytical.
Yeah.
She's basically using that, but she used the word squint when other people were already trying to say that you're talking about Asian Americans, and it all ended for her. She had to get off social media. She had to cancel it. And then I'm back to this place where you're like, you're overanalyzing. I think she made a mistake in not doing a video, putting it into text. People recently did this to Chris Pratt, where he put a message on his Instagram about his new child and thanking his wife and rejoicing in this delivery of this healthy, happy baby. And people preyed on the word healthy because his first child with a different woman had some health issues when it was born. They thought it was an insult that he was insulting his first kid, and it was just bonkers to watch.
It was.
But if we know this is happening, can we shift this and like yelling at the masses saying you're being too overanalytical with instead saying, okay, maybe this is just where we're at humanity because our social skills aren't as good. Maybe if we're going to do stuff, maybe we should do videos so people can once again see the intent in our eyes and the tone in our words.
Yeah, I would say that would help. I think it's only a certain segment of the population, and it will fall on both sides of the aisle, but it's the other side of the coin for the two. But basically, that there's groups of people that are just watchdogs, that they are looking for something that is a quote-unquote trigger word. Now, whether the intent was behind the trigger word or not, it doesn't matter. But once you see the trigger word, then you can have outrage, and you can then voice your outrage, and then you can quote-unquote try to be part of the movement and then be on the right side of history. All those things that we say, which are key phrases, which expose what your real mentality and purpose of it is just to show how right you are instead of actually trying to help the group that you feel is being targeted or help the person that is saying the troublesome phrases. So it's annoying.
It's a complex system. Let's just run it down for a second. So we have all these publications, newspapers, magazines, all these things that are starting to be irrelevant because nobody does that anymore. So they go to websites. Well, now websites are starting to become irrelevant, Cody. Why? Because social media is the thing now. And so these websites, in order to survive, all of a sudden have to print what we call clickbaity things. The headline has to say something so it'll get shared on social media. Tons of people will share it, click on it, read the article. But here's the problem, because this also happened to a guy named Joe Rogan during the pandemic. Joseph Rogan, who does a video podcast that are, some of them are 2 to 3 hours long.
I don't got time to listen to that.
A lot of people don't got time to listen to that. But they click on one of these clickbaity articles that puts his words into text. Now you are missing the meaning, the intent behind the words when you hear his tone, and the sincerity in his eyes that he can relay through video of what his real intent is when he's asking questions about things to experts on his show. But that doesn't happen. They read the clickbaity article with the text of his words, and then they share it on social media and everyone gets outraged, but they've overanalyzed his words in print, but they haven't actually gone to the source to see his intent in his eyes and hear his intent in his tone.
I would say that because there are some of the clickbaity articles that do include the video or include the audio, but there's oftentimes context to it. And so if you take it out of its context, it doesn't make sense.
Let me just stop you for a second. I can make a real argument that all newspaper websites, I don't care how reputable you think they are, I think they engage in this clickbaity culture.
Well, yeah.
With their headlines.
You need to drive up viewership so that way you can get the monies from advertisement. I will say that, is Joe Rogan perfect? No. Is there things that I disagree with Joe Rogan about? You betcha.
Sure, right.
But at the same time, I also am not out here crying for him to be canceled.
They made him seem like he was evil. And I'm like you. There are things I agree with him on. There are things I vehemently disagree with Joe Rogan on. But I never once have listened to his podcast and thought, this dude's a bad guy. Like, no, he has opinions. He has thoughts, but he's not real overbearing in his delivery of the thoughts. But if you just read it on a text, in text in an article, you might apply things to him that weren't really there. And that's my point to all of this. That's what I wanted to get to with talking about this science fiction author who felt like she'd been canceled. And I agree. I look at her situation. I'm like, yeah, that may have been unfair. But do we need to roll with this, understand this about our culture and say, hey, when we do say something that people get upset about, instead of doing more tweets, do a video. Let them see your genuineness, the real sincerity in an apology. Like, I'm sorry, that wasn't my intent, and I didn't understand. And I didn't know that people were going to receive it in that way, and I'm really sorry for that. That wasn't my intent.
Yeah.
So, Cody, there I was on Sunday morning after church. We went to one of the local Mexican eateries.
Nice.
Yeah, nice little Mexican restaurant in our little town. And I'm sitting there, and as I'm waiting for my food, I notice there's something strange up on the television. Now, first of all, they were on I don't know if it was ESPN The Ocho or CBS Sports Level 4. It was weird.
Okay.
We're really reaching as far as what we call sports. I noticed it. I said, well, that's odd. And then I moved on. But then my children saw it. And my kids, my oldest boy's like, what are they doing? And then I had to explain it to him, which this was the worst because that was the last thing I wanted to do. And what it was that was on the television was something called the CrossFit Games. Yeah. And if you imagine that this was like the Olympics of CrossFitting, yeah, that's exactly what it was. I didn't even need sound. There was no sound because we're in a restaurant and you're watching it. And I knew within, 10 seconds of watching it, this was utterly ridiculous. But there they were, CrossFit Games. And my son finally asked this question. And then I have to go through this whole thing of well, it's a sport. This is allegedly a sport. And my son is he's in this phase where he just asks questions all the time. He just is a question asker. He's in 6th grade, going into 6th grade, and he's just asking all the questions. He's like, yeah, but why is this sport? What are they doing? I was like, okay, well, see, CrossFit was something we came up with because we were really bored. We were really bored, and one day they thought, hey, you know what? Exercising just isn't enough for me anymore. I'm going to exercise without borders.
Exactly.
like Doctors Without Borders, except exercise. And then I'm going to make sure everyone sees me in my CrossFitting. I don't even know what it's really about. It just seemed really visible there for a while, and everybody was doing it.
Oh yeah, like it had almost become its own religion.
And they were, they were super militant about it.
Oh yeah,
like look at me in my CrossFitting. I don't even know what CrossFitting is. It sounds somewhat risque.
It does. I was watching ESPN, and it's been a little while. They had on tag.
Yes.
And
that is bonkers. That's just pure chaos.
And like you had to be good at parkour to do this tag because they had obstacles that you could crawl on, run under, jump over. Oh yeah, this was too extreme of tag for me.
Yeah, I mean, and the space they were playing tag in was like this. I mean, looked roughly 15 by 15 feet. Not a very big space. And this guy's like, he's trying to avoid being touched. I mean, in the time of COVID, I'd seen it before. It's wild. But yeah, I feel like I try to keep it simple with my children. And I'm just like, well, yeah, we're just really bored.
We are.
And we come up with all the sports. So we continue to eat our, Tex-Mexican meal. Because we don't get real Mexican here in the States. It's always Tex-Mex, which I'm not complaining. I've been to Mexico and had real Mexican, and it's good food. Don't get me wrong. But what I fell in love with is definitely American in origination.
It happens.
Yeah, they don't like, what I found in Mexico is they don't like cheese nearly as much as we do.
That's not shocking.
Yeah, like you're not going to get cheese sauce there at all. And they'll use shredded cheese sparingly.
How dare you?
Yeah, you get street tacos, anything like that. There's usually not going to be cheese on them. Anyways, so we continue our meal, and I'm eating I had like a big plate of, food, vegetables, meat, lots of cheese sauce.
All the cheese sauce.
Bathed in cheese sauce. And my son continues to ask questions about the CrossFit Games that are up on the television. And by this time, I'm getting frustrated because I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say about CrossFit. Yeah, it was this weird little exercise craze that I thought was gone, but apparently not.
No.
And listen, Cody, they were doing like this weird relay thing where the guy would he would do a couple squats and then you'd move farther down the path and then you'd do some pull-ups and then you'd move farther down the path and you do some other weird thing. This is just working out. Why is this CrossFit? Why does it have a name? It's just working out. Is it because they're doing many things all at once? Is that what makes it CrossFit?
You're cross-training the whole body, Dave.
All right.
In one exercise sitting.
So at some point they show all the competitors' names and the nationalities because it was like the Olympics of CrossFit. And inevitably, this is the least surprising thing you'll hear all day. Almost all of them are Americans.
What?
And my son, because he's observant and is asking questions, says, how come they're all Americans? And I was like, well, because Americans are really bored. We are the most bored. And we invented CrossFit because we're the most bored. And naturally, we are the best at CrossFit because we made it up.
I would have just handed your son a phone at that point and been like, do a Wikipedia search. It will teach you all you need to know.
Oh, I thought you were telling me to hand him a phone and be like, hello, hypnotized by the Mr. Beast. Hypnotized.
That too.
By the YouTube. Ooh, oh, it's Dude Perfect. Be quiet now. Oh my goodness. It was one of those moments listen, I love that my son is in this phase where he's asking questions, and he's asking, it's not like the little kid questions where you get annoyed because they're just dumb questions. And like the kid's just doing it to kind of interject in your conversations, you know? These are real questions. He's like looking around at the world. He's asking real questions. They kind of get fun for a little bit around 6th grade.
And then it disappears.
And then they hate you. And so I like that he asks real questions, but I find myself, did you ever read Calvin and Hobbes?
No, that was too elitist for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You were just too young. Too elitist. That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
It was in like the newspaper, Dave. You'd have to subscribe.
Oh, no, I just, read other people's newspapers or went to the library in school or whatever, or bought the when they compiled all the strips together, I would buy the Calvin and Hobbes books because they were worth it. Calvin and Hobbes was legendary. Rumor
on the street is you're correct.
Anyways, that's not the point. My point wasn't to bring them up to praise Calvin and Hobbes, which is indeed worthy of praise. My point was the dad, Calvin's dad in the comic strips. Calvin will always ask him asking him questions, and he's always like real cynical and jokey with the answer. Sometimes just straight up lying to Calvin. And so I felt like Calvin's dad when I'm just like, I seriously gave him that answer. He's like, how come they're all Americans? I was like, well, because Americans are the most bored. And that makes us the best at CrossFit.
Huzzah.
So there you go. That's, I explained to him our CrossFit dominance.
We are number one.
We are number one. USA. USA. So I continue eating my lunch, my post-church lunch at our Mexican eatery, which was lovely. It was wonderful. The food was amazing. I had a great moment there after church because the restaurant we were at had hired a guy who like kind of walks around our town, who most people think he's homeless, but he's not. He struggles with some things, and they had hired him as a dishwasher. And I saw him in the back. And he had a big smile on. So it was just a really great lunch. The food was good. The people are good. There's some real Jesus like loving people in there where they're loving on other people. It was just a great atmosphere. And then, as if to take it all down, my son points something out right almost at the end of the meal. He says, "Hey, look, the winner of the CrossFit Games. He's got the flag on him. He's American." Yay, America, we won. And I was like, well, of course an American won the CrossFit Games.
It was only Americans.
No, there were a couple random guys. There were a couple random people thrown in there from other places. But yeah, that's what we did. The world came up with the world's strongest man. You remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Where they would lift like boulders and stuff?
Yeah.
Or roll boulders, and like it was all mythological. Seemed like Magnus Vermagnuson.
Real men such as myself.
Yeah. These men would eat you for breakfast. Like you would accidentally get mixed in with their food, and they just pick Cody up because these men were giants.
They were. One of the guys from Game of Thrones did that.
Yeah, he played appropriately enough a guy named the Mountain.
And he looked like a mountain of a man.
Yeah. But that was the generation after me. When I was younger, late at night on ESPN, that would come on. Or early on like Saturday mornings when there was nothing else on. you'd see some World's Strongest Man. And it was always Magnus Vermagnuson.
It was.
The Swede.
Who was the host of that?
I don't even remember.
I want to say it was Mike Golick's brother.
This is Bob Golick.
I think it was.
Well, it was good stuff. And that seemed real to me. And then there was the CrossFit Games. And I just thought, if this isn't ESPN The Ocho, it deserves to be on there. On there with tag, dodgeball, whatever else is getting thrown on there. Because I was just thinking, that's not a sport. But congratulations to the American who won, though. That
I want them to bring back American Gladiator.
Now, see, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. But that is a conversation for another day.
That is.
But it is a fantastic, fantastic idea. So last night, before I went to bed on my Facebook, I reposted this little meme that says, for those people that know me, know I love blank. And the amount of Brahms answers I got is just...
So, if I'm not mistaken, if I was to do a spoiler alert, Brahms doesn't even go in the top 5 of fast food places for Dave.
Oh, no. Like, not at all. It's not like I would be mad if Brahms came here. But really, this all stems from, we did this like gimmick. It was just a gag for the radio where I went and took a picture holding the "Where's Our Brahms" sign. And I probably made Matt Godinez's life a living hell because he's the head of the Regional Development Authority here in our town. And he's kind of the guy that tries to get places to come here. And I'm sure he gets peppered with when are we getting our Brahms questions all the time. But you know who gets them more? Me. I do. Because I'm the Brahms guy. I'll be out at Walmart. Listen, I do the radio. I have a successful podcast. You know,
we're using some terms loosely here.
We measure things the way we want to measure them, right? I'm a youth pastor. This week, I'm kind of acting as an associate pastor this week and last week because my pastor's out of town. I'm a busy guy. I do a lot of things. And yet I'll go out to the Walmart and nearly every time I'll have a stranger come up to me and be like, "You're the Brahms guy." Yes. When are we getting our Brahms? I don't know, bro. I don't know.
Local celebrity.
Yeah. I always thought it would be from saving like a nursing home from a fire. I always thought I'd be a hero, like, because I loved comic books growing up, but nope, that's it. It was from a gag picture of me holding up a sign outside a business that said, "Where's our Brahms?"
I always thought for myself it would be because I would be dunking on fools.
Oh, man.
Because I grew up with Michael Jordan as my hero, and unfortunately, I did not grow to be 6'6".
God knows what we're meant to be, but for sure, all the things I thought I was going to be, superhero, I just never, found myself next to a vat of radioactive waste or anything to get dunked into. Like just dunk a finger in there,
Have the super pointer finger.
And I was good at basketball, but not good enough. I played for a little while, made it semi-pro level, which is, hey, like, look, it sounds impressive. It's not.
Literally, I thought I could become a professional video gamer, but it wasn't a thing when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And now it's a thing.
Right.
And like they're playing new games, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I would have been tearing you up.
There are games of which I think I'm the best in the world. Unfortunately, the e-gaming community does not recognize NBA Jams as a game that they play for money, which they're darn lucky because I would clean up.
Mario Kart 64, you jabronis are eating dirt and shells.
There's too much luck involved there. Too
I
much
don't
luck.
know.
The game tries to make up for the people in the lower spots.
It does.
So the great part about NBA Jam is you can turn off computer assistance. And like, no, I've never lost at NBA Jam. Never, Cody. Never.
Burn.
Yeah. Well, okay. I lost once on the Super Nintendo version, but because it was wildly different than the arcade version. And you could goaltend everything when you were on fire, even dunks, which is stupid. It's just dumb. But yeah, I've never lost an NBA Jam in the arcade. We've got one in the youth room right now. I challenge anyone out there listening to come play me an NBA Jam. And if you get within 30, I'll give you $100.
Danielle's like, why would you do this?
I would do that because it won't happen. I'm beating fools by 100.
Now I'm almost tempted to go to your youth group.
Listen, when I was born, God reached down from on high and he said, I'm going to give this child a special talent. Will this be the gift of helping others? No. Will this be the gift of teaching? No. Wisdom? No. Nothing useful. He said, I'm going to make this kid the best NBA Jam player that ever was and ever will be. And he did it for me. And I'm like, right on, God. Thank you for that. I'm still searching how to monetize that, but we'll see.
May the force be with you.
Hey everybody, Dave here. Thank you so much for listening to our Radio Leftovers podcast. All these clips come from a radio show we do on KFEX 93.1 Firescape Radio. It's a little Christian FM radio station, part of a youth ministry in Chanute, Kansas. If you'd like to listen to the radio show, if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can tune in at www.kfex931.com. Or you can download the KFEX app from your phone's app store. You can check that out there. As always, we invite you to listen to the podcast, the big podcast as well. If you like what you hear, the way it really would help us out is if you subscribe to the podcast, you rate and review the podcast. That would also help us out. Write us a little review, butter us up a little bit. You know how it goes. And then, of course, share the podcast on your own social media while you follow us on social media as well. Thank you so much for listening. We love you guys so much, and we'll see you on Friday.